The light should not flicker when the dry cell test leads are reversed. If it does, the module is defective. There are several other ways to artificially trigger the module. One is to moisten a finger of each hand, then with one finger on the positive battery post, momentarily touch and remove the other finger from the G or green pickup terminal at the module. The flickering light verifies module triggering. Another method is to operate an electric soldering gun beside the pole piece. The spark gap tester, connected as shown, will spark at 60 sparks per second. This principle works only on magnetic-type pickup coils, which are sensitive to the AC field created by the transformer in the soldering gun. It does not work on the Hall switch or the Prestolite breakerless inductive-type pickups.
Now, let's see how our quick test procedure applies to this 1977 Ford product. The procedure for checking for the availability of spark at the spark plug and the coil is identical to that described on the Omni.
Having established that we have no spark at the coil, we proceed to test for module triggering using the 12-volt test light. If the system does not trigger, use the test battery to test the module. To do this, separate the wire connector at the distributor and, using a jumper, join the black leads to complete the module circuit to ground. With the ignition key on, the module should trigger when the test battery leads are connected in one direction, but not in the other. If the system does trigger, then replace the distributor pickup. Having done this, use the soldering gun with the spark gap tester to verify that the system is now working properly.
These quick tests just covered can be applied to the majority of electronic ignition systems, both import and domestic. If for any reason they don't apply to the vehicle you're working on, then consult the manufacturer's service manual for specific service procedures and precautions. Poor engine performance can also be caused by a fault in the electronic switching process, which of course is controlled by the module. Dwell is not adjustable on most electronic systems, and since manufacturers no longer print dwell specifications, we tend to ignore it. Your shop dwell meter can help in detecting some of these switching problems. Connect it to the coil negative terminal and ground, just as in a point system.
On most vehicles, such as this Ford with DuraSpark ignition, dwell should be approximately the same as would be found on a point system. The dwell should not change much with changes in engine speed. If the dwell is unusually low, change the module and repeat the test. On General Motors vehicles with high energy ignition, many new domestic vehicles and import vehicles with high output ignition, dwell will be relatively low at idle, but will increase considerably as engine speed is increased. If the dwell does not increase in proportion to engine speed, or if the dwell should read high at idle, then replace the module and repeat the test.
Make it a point to observe the dwell reading on good running vehicles of all makes. Then record the readings in your tune-up spec book for future reference when you suspect a problem. Intermittent ignition problems are always a source of aggravation because they seldom show up when the car comes in for service. Have the customer explain the exact nature of the problem and when it occurs. If necessary, road test the vehicle with the customer, then drive the vehicle to experience the problem firsthand. You may have to simulate the road test conditions to make the problem occur in the shop.
Many intermittent problems are related to vibration and are usually the result of loose or corroded connections. With the engine running, manipulate and tap the various primary connections. If a hesitation occurs, turn the ignition key off. Remove, clean, and reconnect the offending terminal. Restart the engine and check to make sure that the problem has been corrected. Electronic circuits occasionally become intermittent when they reach operating temperature. To simulate this condition, place a trouble light close to the module or the distributor for 5 to 10 minutes with the hood closed. The component should be allowed to heat up until it's just a little too hot to touch, but don't overdo it. Again, with the engine running, tap and manipulate components and connections lightly. If a fault occurs, the engine will miss or stall. Replace the faulty unit.
A customer complaint of cutting out, surging, bucking, or backfiring may be due to broken pickup wires.
Any engine with a distributor whose pickup coil or mounting plate rotates to provide vacuum advance is subject to this condition when the wires finally fracture due to continuous flexing. To check for this problem, connect a hand-operated vacuum pump to the vacuum advance unit on the distributor, and with the engine running, add vacuum slowly. Then, manipulate the wires at the grommet. If the engine stalls or misses, you've found your problem. As part of your regular tune-up procedure, always check the resistance of the pickup coil and flex the leads as illustrated on this 1977 Ford Monarch. On Ford products, the third or black wire in the pickup assembly is actually the module ground, so be sure to check its condition. On GM products, you may occasionally find a completely broken white pickup lead and still find the engine runs, although poorly. This can occur because positive polarity on the green lead provides sufficient but inconsistent signal to cause module triggering. So always make a visual check of pickup wires, as well as using a vacuum pump and an ohmmeter as described earlier.
The quick tests just covered have been found to be applicable to most domestic and imported vehicles. However, they don't apply to all vehicles, so when in doubt, check your service manual. As a professional, you know that there are some basic rules to be observed when working on electronic ignition systems. When checking compression, be sure to open the primary circuit or ground the coil high-tension lead to prevent possible damage to ignition or electronic components. Always turn the ignition key off before making or breaking any electrical connections. Never jump primary connections to ground unless through a tester or test light.